The first time I heard the voice inside my wall, I thought it was just the neighbor's old building. Thin walls made sense, but the voice ... it knew my name. Ethan ... ETHAN ... open it ... I started recording the sounds on my phone, played them back the next morning. Silence, nothing there, but each night the whisper returned, louder, clearer, and it didn't ask anymore. It commanded, open the passage below the floor. On the fourth night I couldn't resist. I pushed aside my bookshelf. Beneath it, a hidden hatch sealed with old wooden planks. How did I know it was there? I don't remember. I pried them off. A narrow staircase led into darkness. The air hit me first, damp, mold, and the coppery scent I recognized too well. Blood. The walls were covered in writing, some in Latin, others in languages I didn't know. All said the same thing, obey the voices. The deeper I went, the louder they got. I couldn't hear my own thoughts anymore, only theirs, promising knowledge, power, immortality. But something had to be given in return. At the bottom was a steel door. A handprint glowed on its surface. I placed mine against it, and it opened. I'm writing this from within. There's no light here, no way out, only the walls. And now I understand their language. The deeper I went, the louder they got. I couldn't hear my own thoughts anymore, only theirs, promising knowledge, power, immortality. But something had to be given in return. At the bottom was a steel door. A handprint glowed on its surface. I placed mine against it, and it opened. I'm writing this from within. There's no light here, no way out, only the walls. And now I understand their language. Since childhood, I've had a fear of looking under my bed. My parents teased me, said a dust monster lived there. I grew up, but the fear never left. Last week, I moved into a new apartment. Everything was fine, until the first night I lay in bed and I heard it. Don't look down, ... double quotes. I froze, my heart pounded. The voice sounded like mine, ... but warped. I turned on the light, nothing. I peeked under the bed, empty. The second night, it came back, but this time I heard movement, scratching, breathing. I left a recorder running overnight. In the morning, only one thing played back. I'm almost out. On the third night, I set up a camera pointed under the bed. What it caught made my blood run cold, and I, staring straight at the lens. Then, me, a twisted, starving version of me. It whispered, "You're fake. I'm real now." Then something tugged the mattress from below. I jumped up, panicked, but when I looked under, only claw marks remained on the wood. I haven't slept since, because now I'm under the bed. And he lives above. He wears my skin. He uses my voice. And every night he looks under the bed to check if I'm trying to come back. I tried switching apartments, cities. I even burned the bed frame. Didn't matter. He followed. Now, every time you lie down, take a second, listen closely. That soft breath under your bed might be me ... begging for help, or worse, warning you. I took a selfie at a new coffee shop. Lighting was good, background was cute, posted it. 2 minutes later, my friend texted me, "Who's that standing behind you, behind me in the photo?" was a woman pale with black eyes standing to close. I swear, no one was there when I took it. I checked the photo again. My face was blurry now, but hers was crystal clear, and she was smiling a cold, sharp smile. Every photo after that, she was closer, sometimes just an outline, sometimes her hand on my shoulder. Last night I took a video. I blinked, and she moved. Not in the real room, but inside the screen. She turned to me and whispered, "Let me out." Today I woke up with a photo on my phone I didn't take. I'm sleeping, and she's sitting on my chest, grinning. Soon, she won't need the camera anymore. Soon, she be me. And when you snap your next selfie, check the background. If she's there, it's already too late. I smashed my phone, bought a new one, wiped every device, didn't work. Now she appears in mirrors, reflections, even dreams. She watches through glass. And one day, when I blink again, she be the one who opens her eyes. I moved into a new apartment a week ago. The first few nights were quiet and eventful until I noticed him in the corner of my living room, just out of sight from the front door. I could always see something or someone. His outline was subtle, but I knew he was there. I convinced myself it was just shadows playing tricks on me, but it wasn't. One night I decided to confront whatever it was. I set up my phone to record the corner of the room while I slept. The next morning I watched the footage. My breath caught in my throat as I saw him, standing still, staring at me, his pale face illuminated by the soft glow of my nightlight. He never moved, he just watched. I tried ignoring him. I covered the corner with furniture, but still I could feel him, even when I wasn't looking. Last night I woke up to a loud thud. My heart raced as I realized the corner was empty. There was no sign of him, just the darkness, but something was wrong. I heard footsteps coming from behind me. I turned around, and there he was, standing right behind me. He whispered, "I've always been here," and now he's still standing in the corner, watching, waiting. And one day soon, I'll no longer be able to see him, because he'll be standing beside me. I've always had a mirror by my bed, even as a child, but lately something's been off. It started with small things, a flicker of movement in the reflection, a shadow that wasn't there when I turned around. Then it escalated. I'd see eyes staring back at me from the glass. Not my own, but someone else's, hollow, dark eyes that never blinked. At first I thought I was imagining it, a trick of the light. But no matter what time of day, no matter how well lit my room was, those eyes were always there. The worst part, they followed me. Wherever I went, I could feel their gaze in the mirror, even when I wasn't looking at it. I started covering the mirror with a cloth when I went to bed, but that only made it worse. The cloth would be on the floor in the morning, and the eyes would be there again. One night I couldn't take it anymore. I stood in front of the mirror and stared at the eyes. I dared it to move, and it did. It blinked. I screamed, but nothing came out. I couldn't move. The eyes smiled. That was the night I finally understood. The reflection is real, and I'm the one who's not. When my family moved into the old house on Maple Street, I was only 8. My parents were excited about the big space, the backyard, the location. Everything was perfect, but I knew something was off about the basement. I couldn't explain it. It was just a feeling, a heaviness in the air. The basement always felt colder than the rest of the house, even in the summer. And there was that doll, a porcelain doll with dark hair and wide eyes, sitting on a shelf in the far corner of the basement. It always seemed to be watching me, and every time I glanced at it, it felt like the doll was a little closer to the edge of the shelf. I told my parents, but they thought I was just imagining things. That night I decided to face my fear. I went into the basement and approached the doll. As I reached for it, the air turned ice cold. The doll's eyes were staring right at me, and I swear it smiled. That was the moment I ran. I didn't stop until I was back upstairs, shaking. For the next few days, the doll was gone, but the basement still felt cold. And every night I would hear footsteps in the dark. I'd run to the door, but it was locked, and I knew she was coming. The doll was never gone. It had only found a new place to sit. And now, when I visit the basement, I feel those eyes on me. But this time, I can't move, not even to escape. There's a house on my street that's always been empty. I've lived here for years, and I never paid much attention to it until the night I saw her. I was walking home from the store when I noticed the light on in the upstairs window. I stopped, squinting, because I was sure no one had lived there for years. And there she was, a woman, pale skin, long dark hair, standing perfectly still, staring out of the window. I felt my skin crawl, but I couldn't look away. Her eyes locked onto mine, and I swear she smiled. The next day I went by again. The light was off, the house was dark, but that night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about her. I kept hearing her voice in my head, "Come closer." I couldn't resist. I went to the house. The front door was wide open. I stepped inside. The room was cold. Dust covered every surface. But there, in the middle of the room, was a mirror, and in the mirror I saw her, smiling. Right behind me, I spun around, but the room was empty. The door slammed shut behind me. I'm still trapped here, and now I hear her whispers. Every night she calls to me, "Come back, come back to the window, and soon I'll have no choice but to obey." I've lived alone in my apartment for years, and I've always loved the view. From my living room window, I can see the city lights twinkling at night, the people walking below. It's peaceful, but recently I started to notice something in the window across the street. At first, it was just a shadow, a silhouette just standing there. I thought nothing of it, but night after night, it didn't move. It just stayed there as if it was watching me. The curtain was always drawn, but I could see the shadow clearly, a tall figure with long, thin arms. I tried to ignore it. It's probably nothing, right? But then one night I saw it move just a little. The arms stretched out as though it was reaching for something. I froze. It was reaching for me, The next night I stayed awake. I watched the window. The shadow was there again, only this time it was closer. I couldn't take my eyes off it. Slowly it raised its hand and pressed it against the window. My heart raced. I was frozen in place. Suddenly, the figure was gone. The window was empty. I thought it was over. But when I looked at my own window, I saw a handprint that wasn't mine, and I realized, it's not watching me from the other side. It's waiting for me to open the curtain. It started innocently enough. I began receiving calls on my landline, but no one would speak when I answered. Just silence. At first, I thought it was a wrong number, but the calls kept coming. Every night, at the same time, I tried blocking the number, but they kept coming through. Then, one night, I answered in desperation. "Hello," I said, my voice shaky. A voice, soft and cold, whispered, "I know what you did." I dropped the phone, my heart racing. Who was this? What did they mean? The next day, I got a letter. A single sentence inside, "You can't hide forever." I had no idea what was going on, but soon after, strange things began happening. Lights flickered, doors opened and closed on their own. I saw shadows moving out of the corner of my eye. Every time I picked up the phone, I heard that voice. Always the same words, "I know what you did." But the worst part, the caller never spoke again. They simply started listening. My parents always warned me not to go into the basement. Too much stuff down there, they said. It's not safe, but I was curious. One evening, when I was home alone, I decided to sneak down and take a look. The stairs creaked under my weight as I descended into the dark, musty room. It smelled like mildew, dust, and something else. Something familiar. I flicked on the light, but it flickered. The air felt heavier, and I noticed something strange on the far wall. Scratches. I wasn't sure what made them, but they seemed to lead toward an old, rusted door at the back of the basement. The whispers started just then, soft, hushed voices, as if they were coming from behind that door. The whispers grew louder and clearer as I approached, calling my name. "Come closer." My heart raced. I shouldn't open that door, but I couldn't stop myself. I turned the knob and pushed it open. The room beyond was empty. Just dust and cobwebs, but the whispers, they were still there, coming from the walls, and they were screaming now. I never thought much about the attic in my new house. It was just a storage space, boxes, old furniture. Nothing special until I started hearing footsteps. The first time it happened, I figured it was the house settling, but the noise grew louder. Deliberate steps, as if someone was pacing back and forth up there. I told my wife, but she didn't hear anything. She thought it was just my imagination. One night I decided to investigate. I climbed up into the attic with a flashlight, the old wooden stairs creaking beneath me. The attic was cluttered, filled with forgotten things, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. I checked every corner, but there was nothing there. Then I turned around. A man stood at the far end of the attic, watching me. His eyes were hollow, his face pale and twisted. I froze. He didn't move, but I could hear him whisper, his voice like dry leaves rustling, "You're not supposed to be here." I ran out, slammed the door, and haven't dared go back since. But every night I hear the footsteps again, louder, closer. I think the man in the attic is still waiting, and next time he won't be so quiet. There's a mirror in my hallway that I've never liked. It's old, tarnished, and seems to distort the light. But my parents insisted we keep it when we moved in. Lately, I've started noticing things. I'll pass by the mirror, glance at my reflection, and for a split second, it'll look wrong. My reflection won't move in sync with me. It's almost like it single quotes as ... delayed. At first, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But one night, while brushing my teeth, I looked into the mirror and saw something terrifying. My reflection smiled, but I didn't. I froze. The smile grew wider, more menacing. It wasn't my smile. It was someone else's, someone who had taken my face. I quickly turned away, and when I looked back, the reflection was back to normal. But it wasn't the same. I could see it now. The eyes in the mirror were watching me. The reflection still moves without me, and every time I look, it's a little closer. I found the toy in the attic. It was a doll, old and ragged, with its head twisted to one side, eyes staring lifelessly. It wasn't mine, nor was it any of my siblings. I couldn't remember seeing it before, and yet it felt strangely familiar. I set it down on the table and went about my day. But when I woke up the next morning, the doll was on the floor, its face turned to the wall. I chalked it up to a prank. But over the next few days, strange things began happening. The doll would move. It would be facing the door, then the window, then back again. Sometimes it would even disappear from the room entirely. Finally, one night, I caught it moving with my own eyes. The doll's head slowly turned toward me, its mouth opening slightly as if to speak, play with me. I screamed and ran out of the room, but when I came back, the doll was gone. And now, every time I look at my reflection in the hallway mirror, I see her staring at me, grinning. It started after the car accident. I wasn't injured. In fact, I was lucky to walk away with just a few bruises, but something changed. Every time I drove, I felt it, an overwhelming sense of being watched. At first, I dismissed it as nerves, but as the days went on, it became more intense. I would glance in my rearview mirror and see nothing, but the feeling never went away. It was like someone was sitting in the back seat, breathing softly, watching me ... One night I drove down a lonely road far away from town. It was then that I saw it, a shadow sitting upright in the back seat just behind me. I slammed on the brakes and turned around. The seat was empty, but I could feel it. It was there. The dark figure was waiting, staring at me through the rearview mirror. It spoke, its voice deep and raspy. "You're not alone. I haven't been able to drive since, and every night I hear the whispers coming from the back seat." I was cleaning out an old desk in the attic when I found it, a small leather-bound notebook, its pages yellowed with age. It looked like an old journal, but there was something strange about it. I opened it to the first page. Written in neat handwriting was a name, Evelyn Sinclair. I had no idea who she was, but the words on the page seemed to draw me in. I kept reading. The entries were strange. They described events that hadn't happened yet, like a premonition. The last entry was chilling. "Tonight I'll die, he's here." I turned the page, desperate to understand more. But the next page was blank. So was the next one, and the next. I flipped through the entire notebook, but every page after the final entry was completely empty. My heart pounded as I thought back to the name. I had never heard it before, but then last night I had a dream. I saw Evelyn standing in front of me. She smiled, and her eyes were full of fear. "You can't stop him," she whispered. I woke up in a cold sweat, and I swear I saw a figure standing in my room. A man, tall and shadowy, staring at me with glowing eyes. The notebook disappeared this morning, but I still remember her last words, "He's here." The house on Maple Street had always felt odd, even when I was a child. I could never explain it, but there was something about the way the air felt in that house, like it was thick with memories. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and hear whispers, faint but clear, coming from the walls. I would try to ignore them, but they were always there, calling me, begging me to listen. The whispers grew louder as I got older. I tried to leave, but I was always drawn back. The house wouldn't let me go. One night I stayed up late, determined to figure out what the whispers were. I followed the sound down to the basement. The door creaked as I opened it, the darkness swallowing me whole. I felt something brush past me, cold, like a hand. Suddenly I heard it, a voice, a woman's voice, soft and pleading. "Help me, ... help me, ... I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind me. I was trapped. The voice grew louder until I couldn't hear anything else. It was everywhere. It was in my head. I looked down at my hands, and I saw the same bruises, the same cuts that had been on my arms when I was a child. The whispers weren't from the walls. They were coming from inside me. When I was a child, I received a beautiful dollhouse as a gift. It was hand-carved with tiny furniture and delicate porcelain dolls. I loved it, spending hours arranging and rearranging the dolls in the rooms. But something was wrong. I started noticing that the dolls never seemed to stay in the same position. When I went to bed at night, they'd be standing in different places. Sometimes they'd be facing each other, whispering as if they were having a conversation. I told my parents, but they just laughed it off. "It's just your imagination," they said. But I knew it wasn't. One night I woke up to the sound of tiny footsteps. I sat up in bed, and from the corner of my eye I saw them, the dolls, moving across the floor, crawling toward me, ... I screamed, but when my parents came to check, they found nothing. The dolls were back in the dollhouse, perfectly arranged. I never told anyone what happened, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every night I could feel their tiny eyes watching me, waiting for me to fall asleep, and every night they came closer. I sold the dollhouse years ago, but the dreams still haunt me, and sometimes I swear I hear little footsteps in the night. There's an old house across the street from mine. I've always wondered who lives there. It's been abandoned for as long as I can remember, with dark curtains covering the windows. One evening, while I was walking home, I noticed something strange. The curtain in the upstairs window was slightly parted, just enough to see inside. I saw a face. It was pale, gaunt, with hollow eyes, and it was staring right at me. It didn't move. It didn't blink, ... I quickly turned away and kept walking, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was still watching me. I looked back once more, but the window was empty. The next day, the face was back, and this time, it wasn't just watching me, it was smiling. I ran home, locked my door, and told myself it was just my imagination. But that night, the smile haunted me, and now, every time I look out my window, I see him staring back. I never leave my house after dark anymore, and I always keep my curtains closed. But one night I know he'll come for me. There's a bar I go to every Friday. It's been around for years, a hidden gem tucked in the corner of the city. A place for people who don't want to be found, or for those like me who just need to escape the stress of the week. One night I walked in at my usual time. The bartender, an old man with a grizzled face, nodded at me and poured my usual without asking. The place was empty, which was rare. The silence felt wrong. I sat at the bar, sipping my drink, when I noticed something strange. The clock on the wall. It was stuck, not like it had stopped, but as if it were a few seconds behind. I didn't think much of it, figuring it was a glitch in the system. But when the clock struck midnight, something shifted. The air grew heavy, cold. A couple of regulars entered, but they were different. They had blank, empty stares, their faces pale as if they hadn't seen the sun in years. I tried to ignore them, but the bartender started humming a low, eerie tune. And then the clock did something that chilled me to the bone. It spun backward. The moment it reached the hour before midnight, the regulars turned to me, their eyes now wide and empty, and they whispered, "You've been here before." I froze. I hadn't been here in months, but they knew. They all knew. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized the truth. Time wasn't just spinning back, it was repeating. The old bartender leaned in close and whispered, "Once you enter here, you can never leave, not until the hour is forgotten." And the last thing I remember is hearing the same song play again as the clock ticked backward, pulling me into the night that never ends. I've always been fascinated by old mirrors, the way they reflect more than just the surface. They show something deeper, something lurking beneath. When I moved into my new apartment, I found an antique mirror hidden in the closet. It was large, framed in dark wood, and it had an unsettling aura. I couldn't resist hanging it up in the hallway, despite the strange feeling it gave me. The first night I passed by, I saw something in the reflection. At first I thought it was my imagination, a shadow, a figure standing just behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing there. I thought I was just tired, maybe imagining things. But as the days passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadow was always there, in the corner of my vision, just behind me. One evening, I was coming home late, and as I walked past the mirror, I felt it. The cold presence, the weight of someone staring at me. But when I looked into the reflection, the shadow was closer than before. It wasn't just behind me anymore. It was standing next to me, staring at me through the glass. I backed away slowly, my heart racing. And that's when I saw it. The figure in the reflection smiled. I ran to the mirror, desperate to break it, but it wouldn't budge. The glass felt like it was pulsing, alive, and the shadow reached out toward me, its fingers scraping against the surface of the glass. I screamed. The figure in the mirror laughed, and now I know the truth. The reflection isn't just a mirror of me. It's waiting for me to come closer sooner or later. I will. And when I do, it will be me on the other side. I moved into a new house last summer. It was a bit of a fixer-upper, but it had character. Old wooden floors, creaky doors, and a large, sunny backyard. The house had been vacant for years, and the previous owners had left all their old furniture behind. It felt a bit haunted, but I was used to old homes. One day, I decided to explore the attic. It was full of old boxes, dusty books, and strange, forgotten things. But the most unsettling discovery was a nursery in the back corner. The crib was small, hand-carved, and painted in faded pastel colors. There were old toys scattered on the floor, a rattle, a stuffed bear, a tiny rocking horse. As I looked around, I felt something cold brush against my arm. I turned, but there was no one there, just the wind blowing through the cracks in the walls. Later that night, I heard a baby crying. It sounded faint, coming from upstairs. I dismissed it as my imagination, but the crying continued, growing louder. I went upstairs, my heart pounding, and found the nursery door open. The crib was rocking back and forth, but there was no baby, only a small note on the floor. "The child is waiting." Suddenly, the crying stopped, and for the first time since moving in, the air in the room grew heavy. I turned to leave, but when I glanced back at the crib, I saw something that froze my blood. A small hand curled around the edge of the crib, reaching out. The child was waiting, and now it wanted me. It started with a phone call. I was at work when my phone rang. The caller ID was blocked. I almost ignored it, but something made me pick up. "Hello," I said. "Can you hear me?" The voice on the other end was soft, almost a whisper. It sounded like a child, but there was something off about it. "Something wrong? Who is this?" I asked, my voice trembling. The voice answered in a language I didn't recognize. It wasn't English, nor any other language I had ever heard. It was guttural, strange, and chilling. I tried hanging up, but the phone wouldn't disconnect. It just kept ringing over and over, until I finally heard it say, "I'm waiting for you on the other side." I slammed the phone down, my hands shaking. But that night I heard the voice again. It came through the walls, the windows, the door. I couldn't escape it. Days passed, and the voice became louder, clearer. It started calling my name. It began to sound like someone I knew. And now, every night I hear it. A whisper just beyond the walls, a voice beckoning me. And every time I look into the mirror, I see someone standing behind me, but it's not my reflection. I was traveling home late one night after a long business trip. My flight was delayed, and by the time I reached the train station, it was already past midnight. The station was nearly empty, and the platform felt eerily silent. I boarded the midnight train, the only passenger in the car. The train was old, the wood creaking underfoot, and the air inside felt stale. I took a seat by the window, hoping to sleep through the ride. As the train began to move, I noticed something strange. The lights flickered, and the outside world seemed to blur. I tried to shake off the feeling of unease, but then I saw it, the silhouette of a figure standing at the far end of the car. I froze. The figure was staring directly at me. Its features were indistinct, like a shadow that couldn't hold shape. but it was there, and it was waiting. The train rattled, and I tried to turn my head, but the figure was closer now, standing right in front of me, its face just inches from mine. And then it whispered, in a voice that echoed through the entire train car, "Where are you going?" I looked down at the tracks, but they weren't the same. The train wasn't moving toward my home. It was heading into darkness. I tried to leave, but the doors wouldn't open. The windows were sealed. The figure reached out, and I realized I was never meant to leave this train. I found the old shop by accident, tucked away in a narrow alley. The sign above the door read, "The Clockmaker's Workshop," faded and almost unreadable. Curiosity got the best of me, and I pushed the door open. Inside was an array of clocks, all ticking in unison. The sound was deafening, like 1,000 heartbeats, and the air was thick with dust. An old man, hunched over a workbench, didn't look up as I entered. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice rasping. I noticed a particular clock in the corner. It was ornate, beautiful, and the only one that didn't tick ... "I'll take that one," I said, pointing to it. The clockmaker eyed me for a moment, then nodded. "That one ... comes with a price." I didn't care. I was tired of looking at my empty walls and thought it would be a perfect addition to my home. That night, as the clock ticked its first second on my mantel, something changed. The ticking became louder, more insistent, almost as if the clock was alive. I woke up at 3 a.m. The house was eerily silent, except for the clock's incessant ticking. I turned to look at it, but the second hand was moving backward. I tried to ignore it and went back to sleep, but as the days passed, strange things began to happen. People I spoke to would forget my name. My house seemed to grow smaller, and I couldn't stop the feeling of being watched. The clock's ticking grew louder, and soon I realized the truth. The clock wasn't just counting time, it was rewriting it. And now I'm stuck in the same hour, forever trapped inside the ticking. It started when I noticed her face in the window across the street. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, or perhaps a trick of the light. But every night, I'd look up, and there she was, a pale woman standing in the window of the house across the street. I couldn't see her clearly, but her outline was unmistakable. She was always there, staring at me, her eyes wide and vacant. One evening, I decided to check it out. I crossed the street and knocked on the door. No answer. The house was abandoned, or at least it looked like it. The windows were dusty, the paint peeling. I stepped inside, the floor creaking under my weight. The air was stale, and the house was cold. As I walked through the rooms, I could feel the temperature drop. Then I heard it, a soft sound, a whisper, coming from the back of the house. "Help me!" I turned and saw her, the woman from the window, standing in the hallway, her eyes black as coal. She didn't move, just stood there, staring ... Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me. I tried to run, but the woman stepped forward, her hands outstretched. "You shouldn't have come here." The house began to shake, the walls closing in. I could feel my breath grow shallow, and all I could hear was her whisper, "Now you'll stay with me forever." I was just starting out as a babysitter. One night, a family down the block asked me to look after their child. They told me to expect a quiet night. It was just going to be me and the baby. I arrived at the house just before dark. Everything seemed normal. The baby was already asleep in her crib, and the parents left me with a long list of instructions. It was a large house, and the rooms were spread out. The nursery was on the second floor, just down the hallway from the living room. As the evening wore on, I settled in on the couch, watching TV. The house was quiet, except for the faint sound of the baby breathing. I didn't think much of it until the phone rang. I picked up ... Is the baby okay? The voice on the other end asked ... I froze. I had just seen the baby, and she was fine. Yes, she's fine, I replied, my voice trembling. Are you sure? The voice repeated, more insistent. Look in the crib. I hung up, confused. I walked upstairs to check on the baby. When I reached the nursery, the door was ajar. I pushed it open slowly. The crib was empty. I turned around and heard a soft giggle from behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing there. The giggle grew louder, then turned into a shriek. I ran back downstairs to call the police, but when I reached the living room, my phone rang again. We told you not to leave the baby alone. And then I heard the sound of the baby crying from the phone. I was walking home from work late one night. It was quiet, the streets mostly empty except for the occasional car driving by. I had just crossed the park when I saw him, a man, standing under a street lamp. He was tall, and he had an unsettling grin on his face. I tried to avoid looking at him, but something about him felt off. As I walked past, he turned to face me. Hey there, he called out, his voice cheerful. I froze. There was something wrong with the way he spoke, something off. But I smiled politely and kept walking, picking up the pace. Where are you going? He asked, his voice louder now. I didn't answer. I just walked faster, my heart pounding in my chest. But as I glanced behind me, he was following. He was too close. His grin had gotten wider. His eyes glinted in the dim light, as if he knew something I didn't. You shouldn't have ignored me, he said. I broke into a run. The sound of his footsteps was right behind me. No matter how fast I ran, he kept up. His smile never wavered. And that's when I heard him whisper, I'm not going anywhere. I haven't stopped running since. I was waiting for the last bus home. It was late, and the station was empty. The street lights flickered in the distance, casting long shadows across the pavement. I had just missed the last bus, or so I thought. Suddenly, a bus pulled up. It was old, with peeling paint and dim headlights. The door opened with a creak, and the driver, a man with a weathered face, gestured for me to get on. Where are you headed? He asked, his voice rough. Just take me home, I said, relieved that there was still a bus at this hour. As I sat down, I noticed something strange. The bus was nearly empty. The seats were old, the floors dirty. I didn't recognize any of the streets we passed, but I didn't think much of it. I looked out the window. The world outside was different. The buildings were dilapidated, the streets unfamiliar. It felt like we were traveling through a different place, a different time. The driver didn't say anything, just kept his eyes on the road. I tried to speak to him, but he ignored me. Then I realized it. The bus wasn't heading anywhere I knew. It was heading further away from my home. I stood up, desperate to get off, but the doors wouldn't open. The bus was trapped in some kind of void, moving forward but never stopping, and I still don't know where I'm going. It started as a camping trip with a few friends. We had planned it for weeks, a secluded spot deep in the woods, away from the noise and distractions of the city. The first night was perfect. The fire crackled, we laughed, told stories, and everything felt calm. There was an odd stillness to the forest, but it wasn't unsettling, just peaceful. But then, on the second night, as the fire began to dim, I noticed something in the distance, a faint light flickering between the trees. At first, I thought it was the flickering of a campfire from another group of campers, but the light was moving, swaying, almost as if it was searching for something. It didn't look like a campfire at all. Maybe it's someone lost, one of my friends suggested. We called out to the light, but there was no answer. It just continued moving, closer to us. There was an unnerving silence now, as if the forest had gone still. "Let's check it out," another friend said, trying to sound brave, but I could see the fear in his eyes. We slowly ventured toward the source of the light, our footsteps muffled by the thick forest floor. As we got closer, the light didn't move, it just hovered, as though waiting for us. And then we saw it. It wasn't a light at all. It was a figure, a pale woman, glowing faintly, her eyes completely black, her mouth stretched into a grotesque, unnatural smile. Her clothes were torn, as if she had been wandering the woods for years. Before any of us could react, she spoke. "You've come," she said, her voice like a cold breeze. The words sent a shiver through my spine. The air turned icy, and the ground beneath our feet felt wrong, like the earth was alive and shifting. We couldn't move. We stood frozen, watching as she slowly reached out toward us. Her fingers were long, twisted, her hand moving through the air as if to pull us into her cold, unfeeling world. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't. Her eyes bored into mine, and I knew that it was too late. She had already claimed us. It was supposed to be an ordinary day, just like any other. I had moved into my new apartment a few months ago, and while the place wasn't perfect, it was mine. The bathroom mirror had always seemed like a simple, everyday fixture. Nothing special about it, but something about it began to unsettle me. I first noticed it on a Monday night. After I finished brushing my teeth, I glanced at my reflection. My face seemed distorted, a shadow hovering just behind me. I turned quickly, but there was nothing there. I thought maybe I was just tired, seeing things. The next few nights, I couldn't shake the feeling. Every time I walked past the bathroom, I felt eyes on me, as if I was being watched. But when I looked in the mirror, everything seemed fine. But then came the moment I'll never forget. One evening, I was washing my hands when I saw something in the mirror, out of the corner of my eye. It was me, but not quite. The reflection smiled a twisted smile, like something had cracked open behind my own face. I froze, my stomach churned, my skin crawled. I turned quickly, but again the room was empty. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing soft whispers, like a voice in the mirror was calling my name. I couldn't make out the words, but it felt like the reflection was alive. I went back to the bathroom to confront it, but this time something was different. The reflection wasn't just mimicking my movements. It was ahead of me, moving on its own, It grinned at me, its teeth sharp and unnaturally long. In the morning, the mirror had cracked. I don't know how, but I knew it was her, the thing behind the glass, the one that wasn't me. And now, every time I look into it, I can see her waiting for the moment when I slip up, when she can take my place.